Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the joint EAL and NET webinar introducing EAL's Level 3 Electrotechnical in Dwellings Experienced Worker Qualification and the new Dwellings Experienced Worker Assessment route for practicing domestic electricians. So a quick run through the format of the webinar. Please type any questions you have in the Q&A area in Zoom, and we will cover these at the end. All attendees will be muted during the presentation, and the session will be recorded for distribution later on. So please share with colleagues. The aim of the presentation is to help you understand the Domestic Electrician Experienced Worker Assessment and the EAL Level 3 Electrotechnical in Dwellings Experienced Worker Qualification, which went live in July, and the AM2 ED, which will be covered by Bill Lockyer from NET. So to introduce the speakers today, you have myself, Kevin Sparrow, Industry Portfolio Manager, BSc at EAL, and special guest speaker, Bill Lockyer, who many of you will probably know, Quality and Verification Manager from NET. So first of all, we're going to have a look at the Domestic Electrician Experienced Worker Assessment. So what is it? Well, it's for practicing electricians who have a minimum of 3 years of full-time experience in domestic properties such as homes, dwellings, or individual units, which may include care homes, apartment buildings, and student accommodation. It also involves periodic inspection and testing and is limited to single phase only. Out of scope are communal areas and commercial or industrial business building sites. So who's it for? Well, it's for those practicing electricians working in the domestic sector. It mirrors the Dwellings Apprenticeship Performance Units and has integral 18th edition wiring regulations and initial and periodic inspection and testing CPD units embedded. Learners must have at least a level 2 qualification as given on the test skill scan to embark on the EWA and the qualification. So like the existing EWA, there is a candidate skill scan and background form that must be completed to ensure the potential learner is eligible for the scheme and to enroll on the qualification. This does involve a documented technical discussion to confirm that the candidate has up-to-date working knowledge equivalent to the apprenticeship qualification. Now, importantly, this must be retained for external quality assurance. A new important requirement for both experienced worker assessments, so this new one and the existing, is the need for a level 2 qualification as a minimum. A list of suitable level 2s are provided in the skill scan document as shown here. If a candidate has something else not listed, please get in contact with TESP, who will be able to advise. So comparing both EWAs and looking at them side by side, we have the domestic EWA on the right, focusing on dwellings and single phase installations only, and the existing installation and maintenance electrician EWA on the left, which covers commercial, domestic, and industrial installations. Now, from the 4th of September, new registrations in England on the existing full scope installation and maintenance electrician EWA. This requires evidence from a non-domestic location. So that's the one on the left, and I do stress that is for new registrants only. Now, both experienced worker assessment routes have similar components. The domestic electrician EWA requires a minimum of 3 years experience as a practicing domestic electrician, and both routes now require a minimum level 2 qualification. The domestic EWA also has a new NET assessment called the AM2 ED, which is outside of the qualification, but then on completion of all the components, the candidate can apply for an ECS Gold Card as a domestic electrician. So another advantage of taking the new domestic electrician EWA is to provide recognition in the trade and being able to progress to other trade related qualifications, such as our MCS recognised solar PV and battery storage qualifications and electric vehicle charging, all of which we offer as industry recognised qualifications. So now looking at the qualification structure, it uses the performance units from the Dwellings Apprenticeship qualification and, as I aforementioned, the initial and periodic inspection and testing CPD unit. If a learner has an 18th edition pre-Amendment 2, they can RPL that into the qualification, as well as RPL an existing initial and periodic inspection and testing qualification. So if the learner holds, for example, a City and Guilds CPD qualification, they can just RPL them in, which is really easy to do. So looking at the assessment on the units, I'm sure you'll be familiar with this approach. So the performance units require evidence from the workplace, and Unit 004A is a clone of the Dwellings Apprenticeship Performance Unit, but has an additional learning outcome which requires a professional discussion on predefined topics, which we'll look at on the next slide. The bottom two units are simply the same as the industry, again, CPD units, which I've already mentioned, which can be RPL'd in or completed on programme. So as mentioned, Unit 004A has some topics that need to be covered by auditable professional discussion. And many centres I've spoken to already carry out this sort of professional discussion as part of delivery of the existing experienced worker route. So this is not really a departure from what many of you will be doing already. The topics to be covered in the professional discussion are listed there. So you have safe systems of working, cable selection, circuit design, correct installation of cables and equipment, and fire safety or fire detection and alarm systems. So these are quite broad topics, so give scope for the professional discussion to be based around the actual work the learner is undertaking, and also minimises predictability in the discussion. So to help with this, I put in Appendix 3 in the qualification manual some example questions together with some guidance on delivering the professional discussion. So obviously its aim is to really draw out the knowledge and understanding within the performance units to ensure the learner has a command of those key topics for the occupation. The professional discussion is not limited to a certain amount of questions, but really the learner should satisfy the assessor. They understand what they've been asked and can give a satisfactory answer. So when delivering that professional discussion, use follow-up questions as required. And of course, if you have any further questions, please get in touch with your EQA. And finally, I just wanted to relay some other qualifications which may be of interest. We have two CPD type awards for the fire industry, which can also be used by electricians, which is the award in the commissioning and handover of servicing of fire detection alarm systems. So that's BS 5839 Part 1, non-domestic fire alarms. And then the fire detection alarm systems in dwellings. So we've actually developed those with an industry partner, which is Dr. Tom Brooks from, you may recognise his article from the Professional Electrician magazine. And another one which I'm really proud of is our Level 3 award in electrical energy storage systems, which is a fantastic qualification to deliver. So we did work with industry partners with that particular award, including experts at Certsure. So if you're thinking about delivering these, or and also in addition to this, we have our existing solar PV qualification. So if you want to know more about those, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And one more really important thing, there's been a few changes or some big changes with the version 2 of the apprenticeship standard. For many of you delivering the 7345 qualification for apprentices. So I put a link there on this slide as well, where we've done a previous webinar with the ECA, talking about our electrical energy storage systems qualification. And I will also, within that webinar, detail those changes. So if you're feeling a bit confused or you need to go back and review and reflect on what those changes are, what that means to your cohorts now coming in September, please have a look at that webinar towards the end. And, I've gone through in detail with the changes, and I've created some documents to help you transition to the version 2 of the apprenticeship standard. So thank you for listening to me. I'm now going to hand over to Bill Lockyer from NET. Over to you, Bill.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, and hopefully just give you a flavour of what the assessment from a point of view of gaining your ECS Gold Card is gonna look like. So next slide, please. So it is really designed there to provide an assessment of competence. As you may all be aware, the AM2 has been going for many, many years, and is part and parcel of a assessment of competence, which enables you to gain your ECS Gold Card. So what's happened with this is that domestic electrician will also have a Gold Card, and we've been assigned really to provide a assessment of competence for the card system. The thing to point out is that it also now mirrors the new electrician standard for domestic electrician apprenticeships. And at the moment, we have a couple of centres that will be able to offer the assessment by the end of the year. And we hope to roll that out across the country at the beginning of 2024. Next slide, please. So why is NET there for the assessment? Well, basically the employer group that developed the domestic electrician wanted consistency within the electrotechnical industry, and they also wanted to mirror the assessment of competence that we provided for the AM2. So this basically provides an opportunity for an experienced domestic electrician to be accredited, and it puts a little bit of consistency along with the installation and maintenance electrician. So what you've also got to remember with this is that NET are not policing the industry. Basically, we are there as a registered endpoint assessment organisation. We deliver assessments of competence, and we are also a charity. Basically, within this, we have a network of licensed centres across the country that currently offer the AM2. We'll have some of those centres that will be offering the domestic version of the assessment, but there are also other new centres that are looking to provide this as well. So as and when we have enough information to know which centres are available and running, we will provide this as a list on our website. We are also independently quality assured, and we're meeting IFATE compliance from a point of view of the apprenticeship standard, and we basically adhere the same standards to all our assessments of competence. Next slide, please. So those of you that have gone through an AM2 will know that there are gateway checks where we ensure that there are the main requirements to enable you to carry out the assessment of competence of one of our centres. So the thing to point out really is that the domestic experienced worker assessment is separate from the installation and maintenance experienced worker assessment. They are different. So when you come to go to the gateway, the things that you'll need to upload will be your electrotechnical indwellings qualification, that's the EAL 2859, or if you're doing it through City and Guilds, their equivalent. There will be an NET readiness checklist, which is available to download from our website, and this will go through the key areas of the assessment to show whether you're really prepared for doing this assessment. We will also need page 1 of the skills scan. So that gives us an indication that we know then that the training provider that's delivering the qualification has gone through the appropriate steps, and that will also need to be uploaded. and also the verified certificate at level 2 or 3 that basically formed that discussion as part and parcel of your skill scan. So we need a copy of the certificate, front page of the skill scan, the readiness checklist, and the actual certificate. So once that gateway has been approved, which can be completed at any NET centre offering that assessment, you can then book it in and carry on with the assessment. The checklist, of course, must be signed by all appropriate parties. Again, if you're self-employed, then that will not necessarily just be yourself. If you are with a training provider, then that would also have a space for the training provider to ensure that you're ready to take this assessment. Or if you're employed, there will also be one there for your employer as well. Next slide, please. So once the gateway has been approved, you've got 2 years to complete the assessment. So it's not something that can be done straight away. You've got that gap in order to really prepare yourself and make sure that you're ready to do the assessment. The checklist must show that at least you've got adequate in all skills, all right? If there are any areas that you think yourself, I'm not really sure about this, then tick that bit so that you can then go away and get further training or experience on those areas to ensure that you're fully conversant with all the things that are going to be assessed as part of the competence. It does need to be compiled truthfully. You know, sometimes you think, yeah, I can do that. But you really need to sort of like dig deep and say, well, yeah, I'm a bit weak in those areas. And that will ensure that you've got time to pick up those skills. There will be some resources on the NET website that will enable you to pick up and give some indication as what you need. The other thing that is very important is that all names are consistent across uploaded materials. You'll be surprised at the number of times that we see certificates, driving license, and the registration that have all got slightly different names. It is really important that you make sure that you put your correct name down, you've got the correct name on your certificates, because when you come to do the assessment, we will ask for some form of ID. And that usually is in the form of things like a driving license or a passport. The other thing that you need to be prepared about is that we have a 10 working day gap between gateway approval and the earliest date that you can do the assessments. So it's not just a question of lastminute.com in as much as that you put your details in and you can get an assessment the following day. There is that gap to ensure that from our perspective that all the conditions have been met for our gateway, and if there are any areas that you need to sort of like brush up upon or need to look at resources, you've also got that opportunity to do so in that 10-day gap. Next slide, please. The thing with the assessment is that a lot of people suddenly think, well, domestic electrician, you know, there's not a lot in that, it's all standard circuit arrangements, bit of twin and earth, and off we go. The assessment is actually conducted over 3 days. So it is actually at the moment slightly longer than the current AM2. So candidates will need to book directly with the centre offering the assessment. So it's not done centrally through NET, it's through the centre that you prefer to go to. So centres, as I said before, will be offering the assessments will be published on the NET website and along with availability as well. So what's in the actual assessment? Well, the assessment really comprises of 2 main areas. It's an observation of practical competence, and there's an online knowledge assessment. So the assessment overall comprises of 7 sections. Next slide, please. So the assessment is basically a simulated domestic installation with a bathroom location, a garage or external installation, and will also involve in working at heights. Now that's, if you like, a ceiling void where you're going to have to be working on an approved platform. So the practical installation is single phase. It will have a range of different circuit arrangements and accessories. There will be smart technologies. I mean, more and more of these things are now being incorporated into homes. There will be renewable energy devices. Now, you won't be expected to actually install these renewable energy devices, but it's being aware of those systems that may be in that environment and also providing circuit arrangements for a person with the appropriate qualification and experience to actually install them. There will be an EV charging device where a circuit will actually be needed to be installed. And of course, there are safety circuits with smoke and heat detectors. There is also some containment to be installed. Again, because in a domestic situation, you do tend to use a small bit of various containments for various circuits. And the documents that you will be used will be the Electrician's Guide to the Building Regulations, BS 7671, On-Site Guide, Guidance Note 3. So all those resources will be available in that assessment centre. And I can't quite see what I put right at the bottom. It's gone off the screen.
Oh, it says, Bill, it says specification will be available as a candidate manual and associated diagrams.
That's it. Yeah. So my apologies for that. I'll get that rectified. But yes, so when you go into the assessment centre, all the appropriate documents will be available. There's nothing else for you to bring in. And there will be what we call a candidate manual that will give you all the specifications, all the drawings, and everything that you require. So it's basically no different than if you turned up a job in the working environment. You know, you don't really know, you've got a rough idea of what goes on. You don't really know what you're going to see, but you will be supplied with the appropriate specifications, drawings, and so forth. Next slide, please. So, inspection and testing covers the whole installation, and you'll be using Guidance Note 3 to do all the testing that is required. So it will also include safe isolation, so safe isolation of circuits. There will be functional testing, and there will be completion of relevant certificates. Now, those of you that have been aware of the AM2 at the moment, you know that you fill out paper certificates. What will be in the assessment will be an electronic version where you'll have to take your readings and install and basically upload those onto a electronic certificate. So there will be additional questions within the assessment, which will be written down to verify any requested results. So it's no different than what you would do in an installation. You basically look at the circuits, work out what you would expect to see from a reading perspective, and then when you test it, you know then whether it's within specification of the regulations or not. As a difference to the AM2, there is condition reporting, which will require a candidate to identify various conditions and require the correct coding to be applied to a report. We didn't have condition reporting in the previous AM2. However, within the apprenticeship standard, it was requested by the employer group, and that, of course, now comes into the experienced worker assessment as well. Next slide, please. So the online test, again, will be knowledge questions, and it will be open book. You will have the appropriate Electrician's Guide to the Building Regulations and BS 7671 there. It will be a range of questions covering both those documents. Those of you that are familiar with the AM2 know that within the online knowledge that we have presently, it's centered quite a lot around the BS 7671. Within the new domestic one, of course, building regulations apply a lot more. So we've incorporated that into the assessment. The overall assessment will be graded as a fail or a pass. Now, the apprenticeship standard has fail, pass, distinction. However, we thought within the experienced worker assessment, because there's no scenario interview, as there is within the apprenticeship version, that it's just a pass or a fail. The results will be emailed out after 5 working days. This allows us as an organisation to moderate the results, and that is basically after the assessment centre has completed their marking. So, don't think to yourself, well, I finished my assessment on a Wednesday, I should get my results by the following Tuesday. It may not arrive till the Thursday because the assessment wasn't actually marked until a day or so later. We do have a requirement and a completion that assessment centres must mark that within a set period of time. Certificates will be dispatched to the stated home and address. Like I said at the beginning, it's really important that your email address and your details and your name are all current, because without that, we've got no idea. The cost of the assessment at the moment has not been fully agreed, but that will be should be available within the next month or so. Next slide, please. There is in development a bridging assessment where if you have done your domestic electrician apprenticeship and you suddenly now move into the installation and commissioning, installation and maintenance world, then we will have a bridging assessment that will bring you into line with the AM2. We are also producing a lot of support materials, which will be available on the NET website. And as I said, at the moment, we'll have 2 centres which are in the process of being developed. One of those in the west of England, and hopefully there should be one in London as well. So there should be coverage by around about the end of the year. Okay, next slide, please. Oof. There we go, Kevin.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. That was really comprehensive. Brilliant. Well, I'm going to turn my video on so we can actually, it's nice for people to see who they're speaking to. And we're going to look at the questions and answers, which I'm going to have a look at now. So I'll read this out. So we got one here, SkillScan page 6. So this possibly one for you, Bill, but we'll see. Composite installation has to demonstrate experience and knowledge of forming and installing PVC mini trunking and PVC conduit. But in the performance unit, okay, in the qualification, evidence from the workplace is different. Okay, I can't see the... Right, okay. I think what it's saying is there, the SkillScan is requiring the learner to do the mini trunking and PVC conduit, Bill, but within the performance unit, within the qualification, there may be an option where they don't have to do it, or it's slightly different.
I was just looking because you got a follow-on one from there. So it looks...
Oh yes, freeze from PVC conduit, PVC trunking, cable tray, bars. Okay, not sure where you would find basket and tray in a domestic dwelling. Okay, I don't know. I think I can maybe able to answer that a bit. I think the performance unit criteria, because they derive from the apprenticeship qualification, the employers on the Trailblazer group decided that they did want those containment methods in. Now, it may be, as things evolve, reflecting back on the old NVQ diploma, and I'm sure you'll recall this, Bill. I think it started off as 9 types of cables and equipment, and over time it became 7 out of 9, and then it whittled down and changed. So potentially, if there's any limitations, or your learners you feel are not going to be able to achieve that easily in a realistic way, we can definitely feed that back to TESP and also contact them directly. Have you got anything to add to that, Bill, at all?
No, as I say, I think it's just we got that little bit of an anomaly between what's required from the SkillScan and what's required for the qualification.
Okay, so maybe one to have a look at. Okay, we've got another question here. Can the level 2 qualification have been done at any time within the 3 years, or does it have to have been done prior to the 3 years? Yes, it's prior to those 3 years. So the idea, and also level 2 qualification is minimum. So a learner may come in with a level 3 qualification, but yeah, it would have been done prior to those 3 years. So let's have a look at the next one. SkillScan, page 5, 18 months to complete. what happens if the candidate runs over 18 months?
Mm.
Um, Bill, any thoughts on that at all?
Again, it's an awkward one because you can see this from current qualifications at the moment. There are people that, due to circumstances, either the work dries up or they've had an issue where it does. I mean, the only thing I would say is that you probably may need to revisit the skill scan again after that period of time because things may have changed.
Okay. Okay. And also, again, with this, it is a new kind of EWA, new qualification. If you're finding things not quite right or working or could be improved, I would definitely suggest feed them back to test.
Yeah.
Um,
I think with that one, you can't really have something that's open forever.
yeah, absolutely. Because I think what may happen is because you want to get a holistic feel, don't you, for the what that candidate can do across those units in a time frame. And I'm thinking way back when I used to do wiring of houses, it was almost week in, week out building that evidence, wasn't it? So I think as long as that candidate is compiling that portfolio, the opportunities for gathering evidence for that portfolio should be happening very often, shouldn't they, Bill? Certainly in a domestic setting.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about how long it takes to rewire a typical, dwelling type installation. The next one, how will we know which EWA to put a candidate on? Um, I think from my perspective, I'm sure you'll have something to add here, Bill, is go to the skill scan, but also have a look within the qualification manual, compare both side by side. You've got the installation and maintenance electrician, does require at the moment one instance of evidence in England from non-domestic. And obviously the dwellings is single phase. The
Yeah.
other one is three phase. You've got the demarcation between commercial and industrial building sites on we'll call it full scope installation and maintenance EWA to one which is dwellings only. And actually, we help the industry work out that demarcation, and it actually derives from BS 5839 Part 6, which is domestic fire alarms, and Part 1, non domestic fire alarms. So there's parallels within British standard documents about what's domestic, what's non domestic, etc. But again, if you're not too sure, please get in touch with EAL or indeed test. But it's either a query that comes through to me, we'll be able to close it off pretty quick.
I think if you do a skill scan and a discussion with a candidate, you'll certainly get a feel of the type of work that they do on a regular basis. If you've got somebody that's primarily looking at property maintenance, then that experienced worker is going to go down the domestic route as opposed to somebody that does shop fitting that has got a vast range of different installation techniques.
Absolutely. So another question: given the difference in professional discussion and Q&A as assessment methods, as highlighted in AL Assessor Guidance and by EQAs, might it be preferable to name the contents of Appendix 3 discussion points rather than questions? Yeah, really good point. I like that. We will rename it if that makes signposts easier. Yeah. So we'll take that feedback on board. Thank you for that. Bill, this is one for you. I think you mentioned where can I take the AM2 DE?
Yeah, at the moment, we've got no centres that are running the AM2DE. We're piloting at the moment, and it's very much likely that you're going to have, as I said, one in the southwest, and there will be possibly a sister site in London. But we do have quite a number of centres that are looking at offering this particular assessment. The biggest problem, of course, is that before a centre will commit, is having the numbers that they can see in the pipeline. So as soon as we've got some indication of the take up, then more centres will spring up.
Excellent, thanks, Bill. I think the next one I've answered there. So the next one, can you please clarify how we assess when training finishes and the 3 years experience begins. Let's reread that. Can you please clarify how we assess when training finishes and the 3 year training begins? Um, I think really, from my perspective, Bill, so it's that kind of, it's almost like that transition when someone does a level two. In my mind, they really need to be working in the industry. So that 3 years is a minimum. So, they could be working in the domestic sector for many more years than that. But looking at the minimum requirements, I think, someone could have done a level two, and then, they're working with somebody, they get a job for whatever reason they don't do an apprenticeship.
Yep.
But they're doing that kind of meaningful work. They're learning on the tools, as we call it. And then I think as long as they've done that full time for that 3 year period, and one of the things I always bear in mind is when that learner or candidate presents themselves, you really ask yourself, are they a genuine experienced worker? And I think applying the skill scan, and your own judgment, that's the key.
Yeah.
Anything to add there, Bill?
Yeah, I'm just saying. I mean, with that, I think what we're not looking for are the people that have just come out and done a full-time level two qualification at the college, and then they suddenly put themselves in thinking, well, yeah, I have been working, so it'll be 3 years after that they have been working as in that environment. Then that's when you could then put them in for that experienced worker route. The other thing is that you've got to be mindful of as well is that there are people out there that have been working in that environment that could actually be doing a level two, level three certificate at night school while they're working. So, you just got to take that into account. You just got to really drill down through your skill scan and your professional discussion, because you know yourselves whether somebody's trying to pull the wool over your eyes. But it's getting that nitty gritty, and that's what the skill scan is there for, to ensure that the people that go onto that experienced worker route have got that working environment skills and can actually physically do the job, not those that are straight out of college and they need to be on the domestic electrician qualification rather than the experienced worker route.
Yeah, 100%. And just to add to that, if someone does come forward, you're not sure, drop us a line here at EAL or even TESP, and we'll be able to make a decision on that.
Yeah, I'd also like to reinforce on that is that from our perspective, we get many inquiries about qualifications and certificates at NET. Those really need to be sort of like forwarded on to TESP rather than ourselves, because at the end of the day, we are only an assessment and endpoint assessment organisation. We've got the details of what you need for the assessments. Advice and guidance from us really needs to be sought from the appropriate organisation.
Yeah, so get in touch with us on that point. So the next one, I've just completed a domestic rewire with cable baskets in the loft, supporting all installed T&E cables. So I think this goes back to one of the previous questions around opportunities for certain containment within dwellings. And so this person here, I think, just confirming they've used cable basket in the loft. And I think that was my understanding. I don't think have you seen that, Bill, yourself? People using cable basket? I've certainly heard of it being used, which seems very sensible.
Yeah, it does, but sometimes people will put some cable basket in the roof just to meet the requirements of the qualification. So you just got to be a bit mindful of that.
Bit artificial, then, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, you just missed a question out there as well from Brian, by the looks of it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So for that
Okay.
one, the bridging unit will take into account the difference between the experience of 3 years to 5 years. We will do that. Is that we won't allow them to take that bridging unit until such times as their experience has been increased, because they will then also need to have the appropriate top up to the electrical installation qualification as well.
Okay, lovely. So next one here, will completed knowledge units from the 7695 Saturday qualification as RPL 7695, is it 7345? I'm not sure. 7695. You'll have to forgive me, if it's knowledge units, that may be one we need to work out. I think if it's a level, I'm trying to think which one that is. So maybe if that person could just type that into the chat again, which qualification that is, and we'll probably be able to give you an answer right now. So I'm going to move on to the next one. Okay, would it be possible for the AOs to create a level 2 technical certificate without practical tasks? The reason I ask is that the potential candidate already should have 3 years on-site experience. So, okay, so I think what we're saying here is that with the prerequisite now, someone's got a level 2, they need those 3 years experience on site to enter into this scheme. I think what we're saying here, there may be, and I certainly used to work with people like this back in the 90s who are very skilled in a domestic setting, but had done an allied apprenticeship, sometimes in tool making or something. And I think the downturn in the early 90s, they just got into the building trade and certainly electrotech, but they don't have the right type of qualification. So I think at the moment, that particular type of qualification isn't on the, we have discussed that with industry body TESP, but I think the feel is at the moment not to introduce further technical certificates when there is already quite a number out there currently and historically, but it certainly might be available in future. And hopefully that answers that question. The next one is a level domestic installer award acceptable as a qualification to enroll on the EWR. So, Bill, I think this is relating to the level 2 domestic electrical installer awards.
Yeah.
As my understanding, previously they don't currently feature in the skill scan. So currently it's a no. However, if you've got perhaps a candidate who is a QS who has done that level 2, what I do is go and have send that inquiry into TESP, who will be able to make a judgment for you. Okay. And hopefully I've interpreted all those questions correctly.
Yeah, I was at the level 3 in dwellings qualification. That was the one. So that was the 7695.
Right, thank you. Well, it kind of would do, but the level 3 dwellings qualification, the important thing to remember is that's ring fenced to apprentices, and but I suppose you could get an example where an apprentice, I'm not sure, I'm just trying to give a scenario out loud. Apprentice, they've done the knowledge units. For whatever reason, they've kind of lost their apprenticeship. Maybe the firm's become insolvent or something, but they're kind of working, but they've got those knowledge unit achievement. I think I'd like to say it doesn't appear on the skill scan. So technically, no, but I can see where you're coming from. So I think with that, I think if that were to happen, direct that to TESP because we don't want to disadvantage people. But ideally, that person, if they have achieved that, those knowledge units, they really should finish their apprenticeship. So I don't see that as a likely scenario, if that's okay. Oh, okay, another one. LCR Domestic Installer Award. Oh, right. Okay. So at the moment, we're talking here is the level 3 LCR Domestic Installer Award appropriate for the candidate to enter this? I think, again, unless it's on the skill scan, I'm not sure that one is. I would definitely forward that to TESP, and they can make a judgment on that one.
Yeah.
So the next one, the 7695 qualification that is being withdrawn. Okay, I'll have to check that one. Maybe we can pick that up separately, and then I'll be able to give you an answer on that. So I think, yeah, Okay, the question's been cleared there. Yeah, what I've done, that particular question may need a bit more of an in-depth response. So my details are on the back end of the presentation. So please drop me a line and we can talk about that further. Another one being dropped in here. Um, can there be any other way of proving 3 years experience other than the level 2 diploma? Well, they're two separate things. So the level 2 qualification is a minimum. So they need both. They need both the minimum qualification requirements and the experience.
Yep.
So they need both. They need both things. And what I suggest is have a look at the skill scan, read through that, and then there's some key checklists which will help you.
Yeah, there's one just before that as well, Kevin. It says, please confirm a previous response as the existing experienced worker skill scan is 5 years on-site experience post completing qualifications.
That's right. Yeah.
That's correct. I mean, the domestic one really should be in line with that. So it's 3 years post completing qualifications. But it's like I said, it's quite a difficult one because you do have people in the domestic field where they are running doing a qualification at night school alongside working.
Yeah.
There is no prerequisite at the moment for being an electrician.
No. So I would suggest, Bill, if you agree, that if there is any kind of grey areas or you're not sure, best thing is to drop test or certainly get in touch with us here at EAL and or indeed test, and we will be able to respond and get an answer.
I was sort of like thinking as that's part and parcel of as part of the EQA process, they'll be looking at these documents anyway. It'd be something they could probably pick up with their EQA.
Absolutely, as well, definitely, Bill. Thank you. So the next one, who will govern that domestic electricians can only work on single phase supplies? Does it say on the gold card? That's a really good question. I think really it's just showing that their competence is within that area. So I think really they go beyond, they shouldn't really be working outside their remit, so to speak. So, so I think they're not going to be really employed on a large scale construction site because they wouldn't be competent in that, those other installations and three phase. Anything to add there, Bill?
No, all it will say on the gold card is domestic electrician, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. Excellent. Any more questions at all? I may have come back as okay, we've answered that one. I can see. I'll just give it a few more seconds if there's any more questions. Right. Okay. So I think that's now. If you can think of anything else, please do get in touch. So I'm sure there will be lots of questions around this because you've got there's been a lot of changes, I think, in the last, over the summer with the changes in the apprenticeship, changes in the experienced worker assessment, the existing, this new domestic experienced worker assessment. So there's quite a lot to navigate through. So, please get in touch with us here at EAL and we'll be happy to, talk you through that. And as I previously mentioned, there's a link on one of the previous slides there. So you can have a look at the changes in the apprenticeship 7345 qualification as well. And get in touch if you need some help with that. So there's the email addresses to get in touch. And also one small update. We have also created a set of learning resources for our level 3 electrotechnical qualification, which is the 601 73452. They'll be going on to EAL online services from the beginning of October. So they're currently delivering our apprenticeship qualification. You have access for free of charge, PowerPoint slides, worksheets, and various other resources, which I hope you'll welcome. And one last thing, if you know any employers or contractors who are willing to engage with us here at EAL, would really welcome an introduction to those employers as well. That'd be excellent. Anything final from you, Bill, at all? I think you're on mute, so I think.
It's all right. My icon disappeared.
Okay.
No, not really. There's just a couple of other questions that have come in, but
Okay. We'll just have a quick look. All right. A couple of last questions. The DE-EWA mirrors the content of the Level 3 Domestic Electrician Apprenticeship Standard. Is designed for currently practicing electricians with 3 years or more experience working within the industry, not include. Yeah, absolutely. So I think the what's being pointed out there is is training and then genuine experienced work, within the industry, that kind of meaningful. So if you need, this is just a summary webinar. Have a look on the test website. All the information's there. Have a look in the EAL qualification manual, and it will state exactly what the requirements are as well, if you're unsure about the entry requirements. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much.
cheers.
Thanks, bye-bye.